That lip line is just way too stark. It's like... What's happening, my fellow geeks and geekettes? Welcome to a brand new episode of Chris's Custom Collectibles, and today we are going to be very quickly pimping out the McFarlane Toys Dark Knight's Death Metal Batman figure. Again, this is going to be an express episode. Love the aesthetic of this figure. Like I said in my previous video, he's very tempting to cosplay as. It's kind of that goth nightmare kind of aesthetic going on. It's a beautiful looking figure. How gnarly is that trench coat? So like I said, this is going to be an express episode. It's going to be a series of washes, some shoe polish, some silver rub and buff, and we're also going to be repainting his faceplate. Because you just look at that faceplate, that lip line is just way too stark. It's like, it just won't do. So the first step with most custom collectibles is we're gonna take this bad boy apart. We're gonna take the trench coat off and see about possibly taking his diaper off, because being a McFarlane toy, most of these things have these plastic flexible diapers on them. So with that being said, let's get to it. Now, of course, we've got his lovely scythe? I never know how to pronounce this thing properly, but we're also going to be doing some nice washes. I think I'm going to add a bit of blood on there just to really gnarly it up. But for the time being, we're just going to take his jacket off. So it is glued at the collar here in this section, and the back. So I've gone ahead, taken these two pieces off, and then there is a part on the back of the cowl. Cool. There we go. So that back tab there, and there is his beautiful jacket that we're going to be doing some washes on very shortly. Look at him. I'm flying, Jack. I'm flying. This is actually a cool looking figure even without the jacket. I really did that look. Okay, so what I'm going to do is slice the diaper on the side here and whoop, in the middle of his legs. So I'm going to be using a Stanley knife. Please be careful if you're using a Stanley knife, geeks and geekettes. I don't know if you guys noticed in the NECA Michael Myers makeover video when I was slicing the neck of the head. In one shot I don't have a band-aid, and in the next shot I do, because I sliced my finger open. And obviously I can't leave that in because it's not very nice to see. And if there is a seam line or part of the costume per se, you can kind of use that to your advantage. So we just do slice along this part of the costume. Cool. Looking fabulous, darling. Okay, next up, I've just grabbed some unwatered down black shoe polish and just popped it in a bowl. The reason for not watering this one down is because I really want this to get in the nitty gritty parts of the grays of the suit and also his gauntlets. Okay, so sometimes the shoe polish may want to bead away on the figure like it's doing now. And it's just one of those things where you just have to keep working it into the plastic. And when the shoe polish starts to set, you'll get a nice even coating. So don't stress if your shoe polish starts to bead away. If you are following this method, it will eventually adhere to the plastic. It's just the coating that they've got on the plastic, but once the shoe polish does start to set, which it sort of is now, and if it is hot where you are, you'll obviously get a quicker result. And vice versa with his little diaper. Sounds so funny saying that. Next up, we're just gonna grab some paper towel and start to dab away the excess. Now, sometimes this might take a couple of goes before you find that happy medium that you really like in terms of shading and stuff like that, especially in the muscle areas, but to me, that's looking pretty good. Alrighty, next up, we're gonna do a wash, but it's not watered down this time. I've got some student acrylic burnt sienna here, just popped it in a fresh dish. So what we're gonna do is paint it on like so, and what that's gonna do is get in that nice leather grain there, and it's just gonna give the illusion that this jacket is dusty, it's old, it's seen some shit, and sometimes leather, you know, can sort of fade and start to brown and stuff like that, and also highlight the creases in here, because this is actually a beautiful sculpt when it comes to the jacket. The entire figure is beautiful, but just highlighting the creases in the jacket and everything, it's just gonna add a bit more realism to it. Get all up in that detail. And then we're just gonna grab our paper towel and wipe away the excess. So you might have to give this a couple of goes, because time sort of is of the essence, because this stuff can dry pretty quickly, especially if it's hot outside. But so far so good. It also just gives kind of the appearance of rust, because he's got metal spikes on his shoulders. They're probably rusted over time, so it just kind of brings it all together, adds a sense of wear, tear, world weariness and rust and just the whole death metal idea. And there we go. So I'm going to repeat this stage on his arms because obviously they're trying to emulate the fact that the trench coat is on his arms too. Now I'm just grabbing that burnt sienna and just very subtly dry brushing it over his gauntlets, and that's just going to add a rust effect. So keep in mind, we are going to be dry brushing some silver rub and buff over these gauntlets soon, but for the time being, this just adds a bit more depth to the gauntlets, and also because like the jacket and everything else is going to be quite dirty and dusty, it just gives a sense of rust and decay and oxidization on the metal gauntlets. And we're going to rust up the chains and his belt buckle too. Now, I also used the burnt sienna on his boots. Now keep in mind, this is just a base color. We still got to build it up with some metallics and dry brushing and stuff like that. But I'm really loving the dusty aesthetic of this. It really works, surprisingly. So the next step is we're gonna repaint his mouth plate. And for that, we're gonna be using Skin Tone Light. This is a student acrylic. Once this is dry, it's probably gonna be a series of washes. So I'm just gonna wait to see how this looks on the mouth plate first off, and then we're gonna assess whether we're gonna be doing a brown wash, but then also we're gonna be emulating the stubble. Because you see here, the lip line is just too intense. It just doesn't match the natural weathering and everything that's going on aesthetically with the rest of the suit. It's just too false looking. So once we apply maybe 1 or 2 coats of the Skin Tone Light, they're gonna go from there and see what's next. Alrighty, now that we've let the faceplate fully dry, I've just watered down some burnt sienna, again, just a student acrylic. Pretty watered down actually, so this is just gonna be a wash over the faceplate. Probably give it 1 or 2 passes. It's one of those things where you don't want to let the wash sit too long on the mouth plate, because sometimes it can actually break down your base coat of flesh tone, because it's 2 acrylics, especially when one is wet, watered down, has water, it can actually break down that paint. So that's why you got to let it sit for a good while to properly dry. You could even go as far as sealing it up with a matte sealer before doing this stage. So I'm going to zoom in close and show you guys the first pass, and if that looks good, we'll leave it at that. If not, I'll give it a second pass. Okay, so that turned out a lot better than expected, and as you guys saw, I actually pretty much just left the washes on the faceplate. It didn't break down the base skin tone layer or anything, and it just highlights everything subtly enough that, you know, we get the lips, we get the side cheek wrinkles and all that jazz. I did also take the diaper off. It was just resting on there. I didn't glue it back in place. Just wanted to see it as a placeholder, how everything marries up. So now we're gonna do the stubble, and I've literally just watered down a little bit of shoe polish. Not too much, but not too little, because you don't want it really overly staining the plastic. So again, this is just for the 5 o'clock shadow. We are gonna leave the upper part of the mouth plate intact. So you want as little as possible on the brush, because you want to build this up, I guess, is the best way to do it. Otherwise it ends up looking too fake, I guess you could say. It's just more of a gruff kind of look we're going for, much in the vein of Affleck, but also, you know, with the theme of, you know, heavy metal Batman. Now, there's too much wash there in the sides of the mouth, so we just grab a little Q-tip, bang, done. Okay, next step, we're gonna grab some silver leaf rub and buff, and we're gonna start to highlight all the accessories and straps and stuff like that all over the figure. Gone ahead and done this arm just for a test, looks great. So we're gonna continue with these strappings here on the bicep, the gauntlet, the glove, as well as the thigh straps here, the knee pads all the way down to the boots. We're also going to be doing the highlights on his trench coat. So we've got buckles and rivets, and we've got the shoulder spikes. So this is just going to really bring everything together and just make everything a lot more detailed, especially with the beautiful detail of the figure sculpt down here. I just love everything that's going on here. So the brush I'm going to be using, just a flat brush. And again, when you dry brush rub and buff, you only need just the littlest dab. Like, this stuff lasts forever if you're If you're smart with it, just get as little on the brush as possible and just very carefully drag it over wherever you want to highlight. Okay, now that I've put the jacket back on him, I'm going to glue it back in place here on the neck. I just wanted to show you guys that I actually got some more silver rub and buff and very lightly dry brushed it on the cowl and the chest emblem, and that just gives it a bit of texture and just makes it a bit more three-dimensional, especially with the beautiful details here of his scowl in the actual sculpt. So the final step is we're going to paint up the scythe and then we're going to call it a day. And there we have it, guys. Nothing majorly over the top with this video. It's just an example of some washes and some dry brushing going a long way to bring out the beautiful details in an action figure. So thank you so much as always for watching. Wherever you are in the world, have yourselves an absolute cracker of a day. I hope you will. Hope you're happy. Be merry, be silly. And until next time, geeks, please always remember, cosplayers do it best.